Welcome in to Hardcore Penn State Football. Penn State loses again, this time to Iowa 25-24. Stop me if you have heard that before. They go into the bye week before having to face Ohio State and Indiana. Thank you for being here. We will talk about the latest in Penn State's coaching search, as well as talking about what's next for the Nittany Lions, who desperately need a win. Thanks for being here. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Corey Listoki. With me, as always, the great Sean Kane. How you doing today, Sean?
I've been better, but, we will soldier through.
Hi. Yeah, so I got a text from a friend the other day. I don't know what I have on my face, a little fuzzy. The other day asking the last time we lost 6 straight, presuming that we would lose to Ohio State and Indiana, which I think is a safe presumption at this point. 2004 was the last time that happened, Sean, if you were curious when that was. They lost
Sounds about right.
7 games that year. So we are approaching very bad territory. Obviously, Penn State lost 5 games in 2020. I think we all kind of just said, you know what, that was a weird year and moved on from it. Well, we're approaching similar territory that we did in quote unquote the dark ages.
Yeah. Old school fans will refer to those as the dark years for good reasons, from 2000 to 2004, and this season would fit right in with those years. Just a lot of missed opportunities. Remember the 2004 season? 2004 had a really good defense, but a terrible offense. And while we don't have a really good defense, the one similarity we had to we have this year, the 2004 team, is there were a lot of close games. And then in 2005, Penn State started winning those close games, and that's the year that Michael Robinson year. So problem is, I don't think there's number one, like I said, the defense was better that year, and there's not going to be a whole lot of keeping guys next year. I think this roster is going to be very, very different. Corey and I were just texting about guys that we would want to keep for next year because we know there's going to be an exodus.
Yeah, and we'll get into that maybe as well. Welcome onto the show, everyone from YouTube. I see Brian Burge Jr.'s here. He asked about Eli Drinkwitz and Alex Golish. Tyler from Instagram says hello. Talking about Gus Malzahn. Oh boy, we're in deep already on YouTube. So appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you've liked the video if you haven't already. All right. Sean, Penn State lost to Iowa 25-24. We did not have a show yesterday on my side. That was on me. Didn't get back late from a little trip I had to take down to Hershey. But Penn State lost 25-24. They were outscored 15-10 in the second half. And most importantly, Sean, the biggest bugaboo of all was that Mark Gronowski literally ran for almost twice as much as he threw. Ends up 9 carries, 130 yards. That's 14.4 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. They made Mark Gronowski look like Terrell Pryor out there on Saturday. No answer. Not even necessarily a scheme thing. I think T. Frank did some good breakdowns as far as like there's people there and no one's tackling a guy who apparently had a hurt knee. Moulton got his on the ground too, Sean, 17 carries for 99 yards. But I thought they actually did a pretty decent job, especially I think after the first quarter. The first quarter, Iowa, I don't know why they didn't just keep running it. But I thought they did an okay job on the more traditional. I think they would have won the game if they would have been able to just maintain and stop Gronowski. And if Moulton would have got his, he would have got his. I think they would have still won the game. But, Sean, you can't give up 130 yards on 9 carries to a mediocre, at best, running quarterback.
Yeah, and we talked about Gronowski's mobility going in, but we also prefaced it by saying he's not super mobile. He just scores a lot in the red zone. He has a little bit of wiggle to him, but no, that's not what he looked like against Penn State. Whenever you run for over 130 yards, half of that was on one run, but he was able to gash us a few different times. And really, Corey, it was the only thing that was working for Iowa consistently throughout the night on offense. Because like you said, we did a decent job handling their backs. Could have been better for sure. They didn't really have much of a passing game. I thought the secondary played well. It was nice to finally see a turnover for this defense. Like Wheatley made a beautiful play on the ball early in the game to pick the ball off. So yeah, and Penn State struggling to stop mobile quarterbacks. Stop me if you've heard that one before. That is something that Penn State historically has struggled with. And then when you don't have good linebackers, that's going to really get exploited. And I think the one thing that's really stood out to me since Big Ten play started, mostly after Oregon, though, is how bad we've been tackling. Like you said, people are there, they're in position to make a play, and they just don't make it. And I think the instinct with a lot of fans is to blame the coach, specifically Jim Knowles. But that's not really, if he has them lined up where they're supposed to be, he can only do so much. I think when you want to talk about incompetence with coaching, which there is on the staff, it would be more on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yes.
I'm sure Sean has a couple of things to say about that. Yeah, the defense to me just, can't seem to figure it out. Again, the defensive line, they are who they are. They're not getting a bunch of TFLs. Kamaju, yet again, got a nice TFL. He seems to be like the only guy who's penetrating and making plays. And I don't know why he's not necessarily playing. Xavier Gilliam, to be fair, had a pretty good game as well. T. Frank mentioned that Zane Duran didn't have a bad day, but I don't know about that necessarily. I don't think that Dennis-Sutton did anything explosively amazing. And then, Sean, like you said, like the linebackers are the problem. Even, you look at the tackle list, and Zakee Wheatley had a phenomenal game yet again. 10 total tackles, had to pick, one-handed pick. If they win that game, we're talking about that interception already. Just another, I think it's the 6th interception of his career, just always around the football. But he led the team in tackles. And whenever your safety leads the team in tackles against Iowa, that's concerning. That means they're getting to the second and third level on a regular basis. Dom DeLuca had 8 tackles. But then, look, like, where's Amari Campbell on this list? Amari Campbell ended up with 1 tackle against Iowa. Like, what? If Amari Campbell is your better, and I know that they were running at Dom DeLuca more, but Amari Campbell can't end up with just 1 tackle. He had the same amount of tackles as Owen Wafel. That's where we're at.
I don't even remember Owen Wafel getting in the game.
Yeah, well, he's there.
And yeah, they were running at Dom most of the night. I actually thought Dom was okay in the first half, but that's when they were just kind of running straight. I did. But then in the second half, when they were like, oh, we could just run our quarterback and they can't stop this, that's when you started to see the flaws in Dom's game. So, and yeah, Amari Campbell, you have to remember too, he's 5'11", and against a team like Iowa, that's not really the matchup for him. But still, you gotta get more than 1 tackle when you're one of the only 2 linebackers that play a lot. Now, Keon Wiley did get in a little bit too. He played. There was some 4-3 stuff that we did get into as we sort of expected against a run heavy team like the Hawkeyes. But yeah, they just weren't good enough. And then in the secondary, King Max struggles continue. That read option where the quarterback pulled it, I don't know how we didn't have better contain on that play. That was such a frustrating play to me because it was so obvious. It looked like they were probably going to do that. So that was frustrating. So yeah, just not good enough again from the defense. And I think, Corey, if Penn State just tackled better, I think a lot of our problems, not all of them, but I think a good amount of them would be solved if they just were able to tackle better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sean, real quick, did you realize that the college football playoff shows tonight? I didn't even know that.
No, where are we going to be ranked?
I mean, that's just where we're at, right? Because I think if this team's undefeated right now, which we would presume they would have been at this point of the season, we would have probably moved the show forward or backwards or done something. Well, we would have been on a show hopefully on Monday if everything was normal in my life. But either way, like we're not even thinking about the college football playoff. I haven't thought about the college. I see like the generated projections, and I'm just sad.
And I think when you follow a bad team, especially when you have one that's been successful, and they go from being a contender every year, at least a playoff contender, to just not being good, at least for me, I don't know how a lot of you are. For me, it makes me almost lose interest in what's going on around the country. Like for me, when I think of college football, I am focused on the rest of Penn State season. I'm focused on the coaching search, and like way down on my priority list is the rest of college football. Like I really care that much if Ohio State wins another national championship. I really don't.
There's a big gap between Ohio State and everyone else right now. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We will get to your fan questions.
I think they're going to win it, but I don't really care. I'm just not as invested in what's going on with the rest of college football.
I think
that kind of sucks.
Like
I said, not every fan's like me though. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not, but also I think one of the reasons you feel that way is a little bit because we don't have a head coach. Like I think we're gonna blow up the program and start over, regardless of how the season goes, because of the head coaching search. So in our minds, we're almost like forward thinking more. If we just sucked with Franklin, I think we would care a little bit more of what's going on. But since it's like, I don't want to like think of it like postseason already, but right now, like, what are we going to take out of these games? What are we going to probably talk about on the offensive side, and honestly, moving forward, we're probably going to talk about the guys that can stay and the guys that can make an impact next year, the year. We're already kind of in that train of thought, and so that to me is like what we want to focus. As we lost Sean there for a second. I'm going to make myself bigger. Oh, there you are.
Yes. Hello.
We lost you for a second.
That was you or me. Okay, it was me then.
But I think is like that's part of it is we're not at like I can see why you wouldn't care as much, and I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that we don't have a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, and just being out of it, and yeah, not having a head coach, because whenever the news that I'm really looking for now is head coaching news. And like I said, I'm going to watch the rest of the year, of course. I'm going to still go watch the Ohio State and Indiana game, even though I don't think we have much of a prayer, but you never know. Hope springs eternal in a way. But I'm just not as invested as I guess I just don't want to see Notre Dame win a national championship. Maybe that's my main goal right now.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised they won on Saturday. Sean, so offensively, let's pivot to the offense. Well, before we go to the offense, let's provide some optimism. Justin Lustig's group, I know they, for some reason, can't figure out the kick return thing right now, but Justin Lustig's group is doing very well. 3 blocked kicks in the last 3 games. I don't know why Kirk Ferentz tried a 66-yard field goal after they illegally got a practice shot, and it wasn't even close. But they were like begging for it to be blocked. That was a huge play in the game. But again, Justin Lustig's group, you think about the UCLA game, you think about the Northwestern game, you think about the Iowa game. Like Penn State's losing these games, but like without Justin Lustig's group, these games might not even be that close right now, people. Like, I hate to say it. Like, yes, Penn State almost beat Iowa. 25-24 is what the score says. They had an interception that set up the offense on a short field that they still, I think, took 10 plays to score on. And then they had the return for a touchdown right before the half. Like, Iowa gifted them 14 of their 24 points. And that was similar for the Northwestern game. That was similar in some aspects for the UCLA game. Like this team is not 1 point worse than Iowa. They're probably actually like 10, let alone Kirk Ferentz going for 2 twice and not getting it also cost them another 2 points. So, yeah, all that to say, Justin Lustig's group is keeping these games a lot closer than they probably should be. And that's a credit to him. They're doing a great job over there.
Yeah, for the most part. There's still mistakes being made in special teams, but yes, they're making splash plays. And if you believe the nerd crowd, if you block a kick, your odds of winning go up exponentially. And Penn State has blocked kicks 3 straight weeks, and we have lost all 3. So
we're defying odds. Is what you're saying?
Yes, yes, we are. And God, we returned 2 of them for touchdowns. So they're just not. They're just not really being held up by either side right now. And one of the things Terry Smith got asked about tonight was complimentary football, and he said, "Yeah, we need to. It needs to happen. It's not optional." And right now, we're not getting any complimentary football from any other unit. Special teams, like I said, they've been pretty good, making splash plays. Like still making some mistakes, but you're seeing them at least make plays. But when you have an offense that's pretty punchless outside of Jaxon Allen, and a steadily improving offensive line, and I said steadily, and defense that's just not doing a whole lot right now, you're not going to win that many games. And the other thing, Corey, do you remember when we would, obviously, 2022, 2023, 2024, win 10-plus games, and there'd be a segment of the fan base going, well, if we're not winning national championships, it's the same as going 4-8 or 3-9.
Here we are.
To those fans out there, do you feel the same way as going 10-2? Do you? I don't. Now, that's not to say we should have kept James Franklin. It's James Franklin's fault for the most part. But it just goes to just some perspective in life, just something to think about. Because I would much rather be happy 10 Saturdays than 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, the whole part about like, oh, well, Penn State can't move on because they might, go 6-6 some years. I'm like, are you not aware we're 3-4 at the moment? Like, do you not realize we're already doing that right now? And if James Franklin was here, James Franklin's here, we're probably not any better. We maybe win 1, but we maybe, I'm not thinking it's going to be that much.
I think we're worse. Yeah, because I do think they played with life on Saturday, finally.
Yeah.
You didn't see just kind of blank looks on the face anymore.
Let's go to the offense. I want to start, Sean, with the offensive line first, because I know you thought they played better. I'm still trying to figure out, like, we'll talk about Andy Kotelnicki, I'm sure. I'm still trying to figure out, like, did the offensive line play better, or did they just appear to be playing better because the style we were playing made it easier on them?
Porque no los dos.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, going into the game, you heard a lot made about Iowa's defensive line, and I thought Penn State handled them pretty well. Not well enough to win, but I didn't think. I think a couple of the times that Grunk was pressured was kind of on Grunk, just not having that great feel yet for the pocket. So I thought they did an okay job protecting him, and then there were holes there throughout most of the night. Jaxon Allen was able to go through them. Nick Singleton not so much. We also saw a whole lot less Nick Singleton this week than even last week. So I think that's just going to be the plan going forward, to run the offense through Jaxon Allen. And as much as I have a problem with Andy Kotelnicki, I do think that is the right plan for the rest of the season with this team, and that should have been the plan all along. And I don't think Penn State loses to UCLA or Northwestern if they run the offense through Jaxon Allen.
Yeah, I don't know about maybe Northwestern, not UCLA. They weren't going to beat UCLA with that defensive performance.
We were like 2 plays away from beating them.
No, I don't think it matters. I mean, they move the ball as well as they probably were going to move the ball, and their defense was giving up way too much regard. I mean, a lot of what they had to do was because they were down by 17. So Nick Singleton played more literally just because he's a better pass blocker and pass catcher. So I think the strategy changes when you're playing UCLA and you're down 17 versus playing Iowa and you're up 7.
Maybe. I still think K-Tron should have more touches against UCLA, though.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it's harder to get him the football in a situation that's beneficial.
It's hard to get into a rhythm when you're losing. Yes, I realize that, but
you can't give him the ball 28 times when you're down by 17. I guess is what I'm saying.
No, but we could have given it to him more than we did against UCLA.
Yes, we could have, but I don't think it would have made a difference. I really don't.
I think it would. I think UCLA still sucks. We suck.
You think UCLA still sucks?
Problem. Yeah, they beat 3 tomato cans. By sucks, I mean I think they might win 6 games. They're kind of like us. We might win 6 games if everything goes right, and we somehow win the last 3.
So in your pick 'em this week, you're not taking them to beat Indiana.
I am not. Corey might. He's kind of Bruins curious.
I had a terrible pick on them.
We were both higher on them going into the year.
They finish with, I mean, if they get to bowl eligibility, it's because they've earned it. They get Indiana, Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and USC to finish the year.
They could really help Penn State out in 2 weeks if they could find a way to beat Matt Rule.
We can get to that in a second because I don't know how much we want to talk about this Iowa game, but I do like. I don't think the offensive line played that much better. Like I will give them a little kudos, I guess, relative to the rest of the season. They've played better, but still far below like my expectations for the season, which is a good kind of point I want to make here, Sean. I think you were more upset after this game than I was, and I think. I don't think it was wrong. I just think you and I were at different points of the season. I know you had them winning and I had them losing. I just think we are at different part of the grieving process where I had recalibrated my expectations after the Northwestern game completely. I was like, this team sucks. And they have to go at Iowa. Even if they play hard, their defense is not very good, and they have Ethan Grunkemeyer, who's never started a game before. My expectations were very low. Like I said, that blocked kick for a touchdown, if you take that away and you tell me they lose set 25-17, I'm like, oh yeah, that would actually be fairly what I would expect of them. So I thought they actually played a little bit better in certain phases, and maybe that's just because K-Tron literally, and again, didn't even need holes sometimes. Literally just found his own holes. But I was to the point of like, I'm looking for silver linings because it's almost like a team in the NFL that isn't going to make the playoff. And you can relate to that. You're a Dolphins fan. And so you're looking at good things that you can build off of for next year. Then hopefully you get a couple of draft pieces and you're happy, or at least for, a couple weeks. That's kind of where I'm at, right? I'm looking for good things to be happy about because I don't have very high expectations. I have made my recalibration. I think, Sean, again, I'm just speculating on your thoughts. I think you've made that calibration now. Like you're to the point where you're like, I think you said this the other day, they might not win another game this season. And I think that's a fair, I don't agree with that necessarily, but I think that's a fair, I think you're looking through the right lens now.
Yeah, I still think for the talent they have, they shouldn't be this bad. I still stand by that. The other thing that I've noticed about Iowa, I don't think they're very good. I think they're going to lose a few more games. And I know Kinnick's a tough place to play at night, but I still think with the talent, you should find a way to win that game. I still do. And I know you could say, well, without the block kick, it's 25-17. Well, if we don't throw a near pick 6 before the end of the half, we win the game too. You have to take all of that, well, if this didn't happen, if Triple or Pena doesn't drop the ball, we win the game.
Yeah, but a Grunkemeyer throwing an
drive.
interception is way more likely than a blocked field goal for a touchdown. Like we both agree going in, Grunkemeyer is probably going to throw 2 picks. Like you're right about what you're saying, this and that, but the odds of Grunkemeyer throwing an interception on our half of the field far more likely than Penn State blocking a field goal and taking it back for a touchdown and a half. And I promise I'm not disconnecting Sean so he can't respond to me and rebuttal with me. It froze at a great.
Yeah,
we have your audio. We don't have your video, Sean.
My internet.
You gonna leave and come back? We'll see if we can get him back. While we wait for Sean to come back, there we go. Sean, I promise I'm not doing this just to not let you respond to me.
No, it's probably my internet. But yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, it's all football, right? It's all things that if then that, and if then that. And I realize block kicks, we haven't had a block kick return for a touchdown since 2016. So that's the last time it happened. But when it's a 1-point game, any one of these things could go your way. And sometimes when you're in a losing streak, right? And I think of the Oregon game where the fumble doesn't count. Well, that was a break. So are we sure because a lot of people just think we would have definitely won if that was overturned. Maybe we wouldn't, because we're getting breaks and we are not taking advantage of that. And that, my friends, is kind of the sign of a bad team, when you find ways to lose games. So I still think this is a more talented team than 3 and 4. You look at the talent that Penn State has compared to the other 3 and 4 teams in the Big Ten, or the other winless teams in Big Ten play. It's night and day, and anybody would tell you that. So I don't really care about the Tony Rojas injury when you're losing games to lesser opponents, like especially Northwestern and UCLA, but even Iowa. I'm sorry, we should beat Iowa.
Is it also fair to say that they lost 2 players that they absolutely couldn't have lost?
Sure. I still think you find a way to win, because I think we would have lost this game with Drew. I might be the only person in the world that thinks that, but Drew Allar wasn't playing well. He has not been a good quarterback this year.
He doesn't probably throw that interception.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he had a pretty bad one last week. And I know people will blame Liam for that one, and Liam didn't make a great play on the ball. But what the hell was he doing throwing that ball? Trying to make a back shoulder throw to a blanketed Liam Clifford.
Yeah, well, you could ask. Well, man, that's a good transition to Mr. Andy Kotelnicki. What were your thoughts on Andy Kotelnicki's play calling and personnel decisions? Obviously, besides Katron, you already were happy with that, but I'm assuming the rest of this is going to be pretty negative.
Yes, I did like that Katron became the focal point of the offense, and that's about it. Again, they're not the route concepts are bad for the receivers. That's a big reason why they're not playing well. And then I don't think we're running, and I didn't think we gave Grunk enough easy passes. So what I mean by that is more slants, more drag routes. Just didn't see a whole lot of that. I don't understand why Rapp isn't playing more than somebody like Luke Reynolds, who has struggled. So I think the Smolik package, I didn't really understand why they kept going back to it. I think Andy just has this constant urge to use 2 quarterbacks. I don't get it. I don't think Smolik, and the frustrating thing is I don't think Smolik and Grunk's skill sets are that much different. It makes sense when you have a guy like Bo and a guy like Drew who have those contrasting skill sets to try to play both of them. I don't think it makes any sense to play 2 inexperienced quarterbacks in an environment like Iowa.
Can I rebuttal?
Sure.
I don't think he would ever admit this, I don't think he would ever say this. But my thought process on why they went with Smolik is because he's from Iowa and they wanted to get – no, I'm just kidding. My thought process on why they did that is they knew that – and maybe they shouldn't have assumed this, but they assumed that Ethan Grunkemeyer wasn't going to be able to do enough with his legs or with his arm. And so they needed a running quarterback to keep the defense honest for Katron. And if they just ran Grunkemeyer the whole time, he was going to get hurt. And so I don't think they would ever admit this. But did they say, hey, we need to be able to have a running QB, and we can't afford to be running Grunkemeyer the entire time because then if he gets hurt, then we have Smolik as our only quarterback. Let's use Smolik. And I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to use the word. He's a little bit more disposable. He's not necessarily better than Grunkemeyer as a runner, but is he worse? Probably not. Can he at least pick up a couple? He picked up a couple first downs. He's not Bo Pribula, but he can take the shots, and we can keep Grunkemeyer upright, and we can still have that threat when we need that threat without necessarily getting our guy hurt. That's a big speculative argument, but that's the only thing I can come up with because you're right. There's not a huge difference between the two. But, hey, I need somebody who can run three. Well, you saw the shot he took. He probably broke his wrist. He's probably not even going to play the rest of the season. Are you not happy if you're Andy Kotelnicki that's Grunkemeyer or that's Smolik and not Grunkemeyer?
I guess so. I mean, that's quite a dark way to view it, but it could be. But, Corey, I could understand early in the game, especially since I was never seen either of these guys really, especially Smolik was his first college snaps ever. I could kind of see it just to try to open up the run game, but they just kept going back to that well, and it didn't work.
I think that's probably the biggest thing is, okay, you did it a couple times, you got a couple first downs. If you're not going to let them throw it, that's not going to continue to work. That's probably the best argument. Is it did work. They picked up a couple first downs. It was cute. It did work early. And again, it did. If you're trying to count hits against your starting quarterback, it did reduce those. Sean, I agree with you. I don't know why Reynolds is playing as much. He's really struggling. Rapplier did play the most amount of snaps that he had this season. So maybe that transition is happening. Maybe that's something to pay attention to the rest of the season. Do we see Rapplier out-snap Reynolds, Dinkins? Again, he was coming back from injury himself. Maybe we continue to see more and more Rap as we move forward.
And the prayers were answered. Kobe Howard and Tyzer Denmark did play. Kobe Howard did move the chains on one play. Tyzer Denmark played. Didn't catch a ball, but he was in there. So, and Terry Smith was asked tonight, are we going to see more of them going forward? And he had a one-word answer to this and was yes. So I continue to think we will be seeing more Kobe Howard and Tyzer Denmark. Maybe that opens up some things for the offense. But yeah, that was another thing that I was happy about. And I think this also puts the whole is Franklin meddling argument to rest because the offense looked it looked very, very similar to what we had been
some
seeing,
more meddling,
except there was no Drew Allar. Yeah, I know Corey's actually had that theory for a while that Franklin doesn't meddle enough.
I'm just a theory guy tonight. I'm just full of theories.
Maybe. Yeah. So we're going to see Andy continue to cook. I would like to see him unemployed, but I don't think Terry Smith's making any calls like that right now.
To that point, the offense was at practice tonight, but they were in Haluba Hall, and the beat reporters could not because they were in the middle of an install. So for everyone that was concerned, they are finally putting in the touchdown plays. We don't have to worry about it. Ohio State's in deep, deep trouble. The touchdown plays were just installed tonight. You don't have to worry about it. So
we did it. We're going to beat them now.
Yes. Save it all for Ohio State. We really didn't want to show them last week against Iowa. We wanted to save them for Ohio State. Donnie Hartman on YouTube says The fourth down sneak to Reynolds was frustrating. He isn't Tyler Warren. They should have just ran Katron. I don't think Katron gets that either there if it's the same level of blocking that was exhibited. I actually don't mind the call. That call looks really cool if they get it. It looks really bad if they don't get it. Anthony Donka did not block anybody on that play.
Yeah, that was a bad example of me saying it was the best game of the year because that was one of their worst blocked plays of the year too.
Just no chance.
I kind of agree with you a little bit, Corey, and that's kind of the problem with Andy, right? Still, because these gadget plays that he runs, and that is a gadget play. You got to admit that is a gadget play. When they don't work, you look like a clown.
Right.
But when they do work, you look like a genius because everybody was saying his praises about the USC play last year where Warren caught that ball. About a million things could go wrong on that play. And then people are like, what an idiot, Andy Kotelnicki, for calling that gadget play. But it worked, and they go, genius. Right. But the problem with Andy is he runs too many of them, so there are too many plays that they're not going to work. That's why you only run a gadget play once in a while. But the problem with Kotelnicki is his whole offense is based on gadget plays. It is the offense.
Do you think, and we'll probably never know this, so we can speculate forever now. Does the gadget plays go down if they have better options? If things are different?
I don't think so. We had the best tight end in college football last year, and we still ran a ton of them. It's just a lot of them worked more.
But I'm just like, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's different with a running quarterback where they just run more straight up, read option and more RPO stuff. I just feel like because he wants to put the defense in a bind, right? But when you don't have a running quarterback, or now in this case, you don't really have a guy who potentially can threaten down the field with his arm at all. Like, do you feel like, does he feel the urge or that he is required to find other ways to put this defense in a bind? And the only way to do that in his mind is gadget plays. Like, I'm just trying to think of a way where, like, if he had Cam Newton on his team, is he running gadget plays still?
I kind of think he would. And part of the reason, and this is part of the problem with getting an offensive coordinator from the Big 12, especially to places like Kansas, not a place that's been more successful over the years, but a place where you are at a talent deficiency almost every week, and you have to be inventive and find different ways to make your offense move. But at a place like Penn State, we have 4- and 5-star guys all over the offensive line. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton were both top running backs out of high school. We know how talented Drew Allar was coming out. There is a bit of a deficiency at receiver. At the tight ends are all highly regarded. So what I'm saying is he's dealing with a lot more highly regarded guys, and he still can't get away from basically calling what he was calling at Kansas. So I think it's really been a failure of him to adapt to the talent that he's had. So to answer your long way of answering your question, Corey, yes, I think he would. I think this is just what he would call no matter where he was, even if he had Cam Newton as his quarterback.
Tyler on Instagram agrees with you completely. Before we move on from Iowa, because we got a lot of fan questions tonight, I will say one more positive. I don't think there was a single false start by the offensive line. So they actually handled the crowd well. So we'll give them their kudos for that, I suppose. All right. Yeah, I mean, we didn't. Let's maybe just wrap up with Grunkemeyer a little bit because we didn't really talk about him necessarily specifically. 15 for 28, 93 yards, 2 picks. Everyone keeps talking about like the first interception being a punt, and like, okay, yeah, but like we're not talking about the miscommunication on the route. Like that didn't have to be a throwaway. That could have been just a normal play. Like I get like, oh, it didn't really matter because it was better than a punt. Okay, but it's worse than converting on the third down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he did just chuck it deep, and
the guy broke off his route.
We said going into this game that, and you're right. We said going into this game, he's going to be more willing to chuck it than Drew was, and he was more willing. Didn't really work. I think the most that happened on any of those deep plays was a pass interference on that was called against the defender defending Devontae Ross.
That could have been a touchdown.
I think it would have been. I think the guy had to interfere with him. I actually said that same thing to my wife. I said if he didn't interfere with him, he was going to catch that. So I think he had to do that. So I still want to see him continue to stretch the ball downfield. It's going to be a challenge against the Buckeyes. It's going to be a challenge against Indiana to do it, but I still think you gotta. Because if you have no vertical passing threat and your quarterback refuses to throw the ball downfield, you're an incredibly easy team to defend, and that has been a problem for us playing against Ohio State in the past. The problem that the thing about playing Ohio State this year is we have so many other issues.
I know that the receivers didn't do a good enough job. I mean, the stats aren't very good. But at least I thought they tried the best they had tried as far as a balanced way to get the ball to guys. Like Pena had a couple opportunities. He really should have had a touchdown that hit him right in the chest. Devontae Ross, technically only 2 catches for 15 yards, but again, had a touchdown nullified by the defensive pass interference. So they try to get him the ball a couple of times. You mentioned Kobe Howard getting his completion for a first down. And Kyron Hudson continues to run out of bounds whenever he streaks down the field. But like at least I thought, they got the tight ends involved again, as well as the running backs and the receivers. I thought it was the most balance I had seen. It was still piss poor, 15 catches for 93 yards, but I thought at least trying to get the ball to their weapons, they did a better job of somewhat balancing that. It wasn't just all Devontae Ross. It wasn't just all the tight ends. It was bad, but at least everybody was bad together.
Yeah, the idea wasn't horrible. It's just the execution wasn't there. And then I know they tried to get it to Singleton. He only had a catch, didn't gain anything. But I think if you want to continue to have Nick Singleton as an option in this offense, and I still think they should. I don't think Nick Singleton should ever not see the light of day per se, but it's more going to be getting him involved in the passing game, getting him in space. So yeah, I mean the production wasn't enough. They lost the game, and again, the leading receiver had 3 catches for 19 yards, and that just ain't going to get it done. But I think you're going to see Kobe Howard and Tysier Denmark's role continue to expand. I think the more we lose too, the more Terry Smith is going to be less likely to be loyal to the extent that you could be the first year transfer players to those older guys, like guys that haven't done enough, like Kyron Hudson. So I think you're going to start seeing them maybe even start at some point this year. I think they've already leapfrogged Liam Clifford in the depth chart, which is a very, very positive development and very good for Corey's mental health, because I think he would have blown a gasket if he saw any more Liam Clifford's place.
Last thing I just want to say, this isn't really about Iowa. This is just something that I'm curious about that I want to continue to track as the season gets worse and worse. Again, Penn State tackles for loss against Power 5, Power 4 opponents last year. They were number 1 in the country, 7.7 TFLs per game. Basically 8 is what we'd call that in the statistical world. Against Power 5, Power 4 opponents so far this year, they are averaging 3.5. So literally they are averaging 4 to 5 less TFLs a game. They only have 14 on the season. Oklahoma leads the country with 46 right now. So I know we were talking about the offense, but I wanted to come back to that real quick, because that, to me, when you talk about all the tackling and not being able to stop the run and all of that, we're not enough havoc. Is like, Sean, the end of the year, we do our Hardee's Award show. For people that are new, we do a Hardee's Award show at the end of the year, and we talk about, we give an award out for havoc. The winner of that award, whoever caused the most havoc. Who the heck are we going to give that award to right now?
I have no idea.
So just wanted to plant that seed. I thought about that the other night. I was like, man, we got to give Hardy awards out at the end of this year. And
it's going to be a tough one.
are they just all going to go to Zakee Wheatley?
I'd be okay with that. On offense, it'll be all Kaytron Allen. Defense, it'll be all Zakee Wheatley.
Yeah. All right.
I think the one year during the dark years, since we brought it up, the punter, Jeremy Kapanos, might have won Offensive Player of the Year one year for the team banquet. So dire straits back then. And we're right here, back here again.
Yeah. One little note from before we get to the fan questions that are going to be more coach-centric focus, I'm sure. Terry Smith did talk about Chaz Coleman, said he was a little sick, but also didn't really fit the game plan for stopping the run against Iowa. I suppose that's fine, but I think I would have been okay with him spying on, or at least I would just play basketball man coverage against Mark Gronowski and stop him from running for 130 yards and stop putting Dennis-Sutton as the guy. I know why they did that, so they couldn't run towards the other side. But, like, I think Chaz Coleman, even if it's against a running team, should be on the field more. But anyway.
Yeah, I think you get your best athletes on the field because none of the other guys were really getting done. Another thing that happened in the game was Ry Fisher got hurt.
Yeah.
So I thought that was low-key a pretty big part of the game because I don't think he played the whole second half. And, again, we weren't really getting much from the guys behind him.
Okay. Yeah, Lambda, Chaz Coleman. But did I say Coleman? I think I said Coleman, right?
Probably did. Maybe yeah.
All right. We're going to try to go through these fan questions. And, Sean, I want to commit you. I know we're at 47 minutes. This is the only episode this week. So I'm going to commit us to going through all of these questions.
Okay.
For better or worse. Before we do that, let's actually hit this for once. We never hit this. Let's hit it this time. We don't do the little fan question animation nearly enough.
The next time the fans will see us at home will be Indiana. Do you think that's going to be a full house?
I'm going to have a good tailgate for that game, actually. So I will be there, and I will be happy and probably drunk. But I can't speak for everybody else. But we have a full house. We have a lot of our college buddies coming back for that. So we're going to have a good time, regardless of if Penn State does. All right. I'm just going to go through these from how I see them on X. So again, Hardcore PSU FB on Twitter. That's the best place to drop us your questions. We ask for your fan questions after every home game, every game, period. We did wait till the morning for these ones. So maybe cooler heads prevail, but probably not. Let's get right into it. Einstein von Braun, Mr. Longtime listener of the show. He says, we were all told and believed that this was a championship roster. Obviously, that's false. What happened? Why does a large percentage of players who succeeded last year all look like deer caught in the headlights this year? John, I'm starting you off with an impossible question. Please explain to us what the F is going on.
Well, to quote James Franklin, I don't know. But yeah, part of it, it's a lot of things, really. Part of it is the roster just wasn't as good as we all thought it would be. Part of it is the roster didn't progress as well as we thought it would. Guys didn't really pick up from where they left off last season. We had some unfortunate injuries, especially at defensive end. Had some bad luck at defensive end, too, with the Mean Vanover's waiver getting denied. Smith Vilber going to North Carolina to join the Belichick show down there. And then Granville got hurt. So, and then at linebacker, Tony Rojas gets hurt. Thought they should have probably picked up another linebacker in the portal. They did not. Lost to Tamir Robinson. But then, again, I think if we didn't lose to Tamir Robinson, we may not have gotten Amari Campbell. And not enough of the guys behind those top three guys of Rojas, Campbell, and DeLuca progressed. Offensive line, I still don't know what happened, to be completely honest with you. Just, I don't know. I have theories like Frank Leonard leaving, maybe that caused a regression. I don't think I thought Sal Wormley had a solid career at Penn State. I did not. But nobody's going to mistake him for Alan Faneca, for all you Pittsburgh Steelers fans out there. Receivers are the receivers. We needed them to be better than the receiver group last year. I don't think they are. I think they're roughly the same, which is mediocre at best. And yeah, basically the roster didn't improve as much as it needed to do, and then the pieces just didn't fit with what the coaches wanted either. And part of that's on the coaches on the defensive side of the ball. We were told, unfortunately, you got to give Ohio State fans a little bit of credit. We were told it could take a couple of years, and it looks like it's going to, if we decide to retain Jim Knowles. And then an offense, Andy Kotelnicki didn't make the pieces fit together with Drew Allar before his injury. So it's a lot of things, and a lot of it does come back, really comes back. And another thing that I thought of this weekend, actually, you know how we had said on all of our signing day shows, these classes aren't good enough? You're kind of seeing that now, because people are saying, oh, well, we had to play DeLuca. Well, why do we have to play DeLuca? Because we didn't recruit linebacker well enough the last three years. That's why you have to play a guy like Dom DeLuca, who's good in his role as a role player, as a special teams player, and a guy that could play 15, 20 snaps free on defense, but he is not an every down linebacker. So part of it was missing on recruiting, which you could attribute a lot of that to Franklin. So the roster just wasn't as good. They didn't progress well enough, and they didn't coach well enough to sum it all up. But I know that's like a 5-minute answer, but that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah. I just add one thing. I agree with everything pretty much said. If I could add one more thing, I think too, some of why we consider this a championship roster was because of how far they made it last year. And was last year's team a semifinal team? I know they technically were, if you go to Wikipedia and look. But was that team a semifinal team? Would that team that most of those components were on this year's team, would that team have beat Tennessee? Would that team had beat Ohio State in the first round? Would they have beat Indiana in the first round? I'm not as confident as I necessarily was back then that they were. It was a gift that they got SMU. And by the way, didn't play great offensively against SMU. It was a gift that they got Boise State. And so, yeah, they got there, and say what you will about Notre Dame, but they found a way to win that game. But I don't know if Penn State was a semifinal team. But naturally, right, the next progression is you get a lot of production back, you fill a couple gaps, and you're ready to go to make a run at this thing. But maybe that wasn't really where the expectations should have been. And by the way, maybe they shouldn't even been in the playoff. Like, prayers were answered for them to win that game at USC. Prayers were somewhat answered for them to win that game at Wisconsin. Now, there's a lot of grit and determination, and some leadership had some things to do with that. But if Wisconsin doesn't throw that interception, and kind of turn that game completely around, I don't know if they win that game. Do they win that game at Minnesota necessarily if they don't have that fake punt? I don't know. Now, like Terry Smith said, the ball bounced a lot their way last year, and it hasn't so far this year. I get that. But I think, Sean, to sum up everything you said, if the season doesn't end the way it does, where they had a chance to potentially win the game and go to the national championship, are we going into this year with those same expectations, regardless of everything you just said? I'm not so sure. So, yeah, I think that played a lot into it. So, Einstein, way to start us off with a great question.
Yes.
All right. Let's go to the next question here from Chrombopoulos Michael. How many, if any, of James Franklin's teams at Penn State would this year's team beat in a hypothetical matchup? He goes, 2014 and 2020 are the only ones I'd feel confident about. This reminds me of that guy who put like Penn State's worst losses together on YouTube. This is similar vein, I feel like.
It's kind of the way Mike thinks. I think it's still a little too soon to say. Because I think of the 2021 team, they were pretty bad. Although it felt like they were closer than this team is because they still had a pretty good defense. 2015 was a pretty bad team. Thought they should have really lost more than they did. So it's a little too early to say. But yeah, I mean, 2016, 2017, even 2018, 2019, in the last 3 years, yeah, Penn State, this Penn State team definitively loses those games. So they are definitely they are in the bottom, definitely near the bottom of Franklin's teams. I think we could safely say that. But as far as who, I do want to see the West, the way that this team finishes the season.
Yeah, I think they're better than a 2015 team as well. And yeah, the thing is to me, Sean, that I just keep going back to is like, I thought their offense and defensive line was going to be the strong, at least the offensive line was going to be the strong kind of part of this team, where they could go up against some of those teams 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 and win because their offensive line and their running game would control those teams. Like even if they had big plays, they would still dominate with running the football, and they can't do that.
Do you know what I just thought of? My season bold prediction. Do you remember what it was?
I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to
I know it
and go back in my notes to make myself look better
about
myself. Hold on. I found it quickly.
All right. I'll let Corey answer that.
Sean's. Holy shit! I went to the bold prediction from last year. That would have. Okay. Sorry, I found it now. I really need to like statistically put these together because we made a lot of predictions. At least the predictions, we should be keeping track of those statistically throughout the years. Sean, your bold prediction. Am I looking at this correctly? Here we go. The offense will be better than the defense. But
in
then,
an effed up kind of way, I think I might have been right.
Yeah. But I think you went on to say 1994 similar, top 5 offense, top 10 defense.
Okay, well, that part was wrong.
I got that I wrote that part down too.
But the first part, I think I might have been right about. And oddly enough, too, going into this season, I was more worried about the defensive line. You were more worried about the linebackers. Ended up, we both kind of were right. So it's just funny going back to listen to that episode where we both picked Penn State to win the national championship, but a lot of our predictions and a lot of our concerns ended up being true and coming to fruition.
Yeah. I had I had Drew Allar setting a new touchdown record for passing. So Donnie had a good point on YouTube too. Deservingly so, of course, because it's disgusting what they did. But losing Keys and Lions did not help in that process either.
That is true. Undeniable.
Lions, I mean, fuck. I was on one of those pregame shows, and I was like, preseason shows, and I was like, Lions is going to be a first rounder. I called it out early.
Yeah, that's undeniable. So Penn State did have some bad luck there too. There's no question about that. But the problem is they didn't replace those guys.
Right.
They just kind of trudged along, and that was part of. And the Blue White Illustrated guys kind of got into this a little bit too. Franklin's whole philosophy is I'm going to win with the guys that I recruited since they were 16, 17 years old. But the problem is when those guys don't work out, what most programs do is they go, okay, we're going to go out to the portal. Where Franklin really only went to the portal when absolutely necessary and didn't really go after the top guys.
All right. Mudbug, how do you fix the passing game? I noticed they were trying different things, more QPG, quick passing game, rollouts, but it's insane how bad we are throwing the ball. Well, first of all, there's a couple of times Grunkemeyer was worried about being in the pocket, even though it was a good pocket.
Yeah.
So he was just a little spooked. That being said, like, really hard to judge them. They only have like 4 weeks to prepare. So, or 4 days to prepare with once Terry took over. So not saying it's going to look any better against Ohio State, who just shut out Wisconsin at Wisconsin. But you would hope maybe they can get some things in more specific for Grunkemeyer for the rest of the season now that they have a bye week to kind of reset. That being said, like, I don't know, Mudbug. I don't know how it gets better. Like, it looks really bad. It looks really, really bad. And you can get some fresh guys in there, and maybe that's Tyseer Denmark, Kobe Howard makes it more fun. Maybe Rapplier should play more. People aren't open. Trey Burpenda needs to catch the ball when it hits him in the chest. I believe in Devontae Ross. I'm still on the Devontae Ross train. I think he's still good enough to be out there. I don't know if he gives it necessarily his all every play, but like I still want to see Devontae Ross get 10 touches a game, which they haven't done. But I don't have an answer for you, Mudbug. I don't.
It's hard because the talent is what it is, and Marquise Hagans as a coach is who he is. Here's what I would propose doing. As far as what I think could realistically happen during this bye week as far as personnel changes, I think Terry Smith could fire Marquise Hagans right now and take over as receivers coach midseason. I know it's a little bit rare for a head coach to take over a position coach, but it's kind of desperate times or desperate call for desperate measures. And Terry Smith being the de facto receivers coach, I'd be all right riding with for the rest of the year. We only got a month left anyway. Would that solve everything? I don't think so. But it's something different, and it's a different voice in that room specifically. So I think though part of what you touched on, Mudbug, was quick passing game, more drag routes, more slants, and then more Kobe Howard and more Tyseer Denmark, because I think those guys outside of Devontae Ross are going to make more plays for you than Shabor Pena or Kyron Hudson at the very least.
All I will add to that is Penn State is 109th in the country with passing plays of 20 or more yards. They have 15. If you back that up just to 30 yards, just to make it fun, they're 110th with 30 plus, and then it gets bad from there. So,
and I know we both talked about the quick passing game, but you could air it out more too and chuck it deep, which I think
I don't know if they want to leave their. But here's the thing, Sean, is your best player is Katron Allen, so obviously he needs to get the carries. And then, like, the more you throw it, the more the clock isn't running, and the more you potentially have to put that defense on the field. Like to go back to the Iowa game for a second, like that one drive where they bled a lot of clock and kicked the field goal to go up 24-19. Like, yeah, if you score a touchdown, that looks good. But, like, again, they were bleeding the clock because they wanted Iowa to be desperate to have to throw the ball because they knew they left too much time. Iowa would just run the ball right over their defense. And then they needed like 2 plays to go 70 yards, so it didn't matter anyway. But that was the thinking, right? Like they were worried about having to put their defense back on the field. How many Penn State defenses in our lifetime, Sean, are we like, oh crap, we have to put the defense back on the field? Good old Mr. What is it, John Butler when Bill O'Brien was here?
You probably have to go back to that. Oh, do you know who John Butler's employed by the way?
We talked about this earlier this year, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Shit.
We're going to be seeing him in a few weeks.
Is he the safeties coach? Is he at he's not at Nebraska, is he?
He is the defensive coordinator for Nebraska. So
okay, I didn't know if he was the defensive
we might make a reunion of him full time.
Man, oh man, that is just crazy.
Excited about that.
I know.
But yes, that's probably the last. But that's the last bad defense we had, because I could safely say in the Franklin era, all of our defenses have been pretty good. 2014, like even the 2014 defense was good. 2015 was a little bit of a step back, and the rest of the time we've always had a good defense. So this is the first like real bad one that we've had.
Yeah. Lucas Powers asks, how did Andy Koenig survive the Franklin firing? Let me just answer that one quickly. Like, you couldn't fire him right after the game, after they fired Franklin. There was just too much going on. They usually practice on Sunday. They were behind. It just made sense. You're about to get to a bye week where if you want to change things, now you have the time to change things. That's why they were installing stuff today. It just didn't make sense to do that right off the bat. And again, they may make some changes, but T. Frank will say that kind of the best. Like, people still have to be here to coach. And that being said, again, they could demote people if they wanted to, but I would be surprised if you see a massive change before the end of the year. Maybe you will somewhat on the offensive side. I'd be surprised if anybody changes on the defensive side before the end of the year.
Do you want to hear something that's going to make people mad?
This will be good. Yes, of course. That's all we do here.
Unless Manny Diaz gets the job, I expect Jim Knowles to be the defense coordinator next year.
I do too. I completely agree with that. We talked about that a little bit.
And it might work out. Yeah, it might work out too.
I don't think Jim Knowles maybe I sound insane for this. I don't think Jim Knowles is the problem. I'm not saying he's the bee's knees, especially what Matt Patricia's doing right now with Ohio State's defense. Anybody could coach defense there and probably be good with the wealth of players they have. But at the same time, he's been good elsewhere. He was good at Oklahoma State, for Pete's sake. So I know he's a good coach. I also think he's very much one hand tied behind his back. But so I would be okay with them retaining. I'm not to the point of like fire Jim Knowles. Do I think he maybe is as good as we were? Is he to be the number one paid defensive coordinator in the country? No, probably not. No, probably not. But I don't think that is. I don't think he is. I'm not scapegoating him for this season. Not to that point.
No, I think he's going to be able to, because there's going to be a roster overhaul. He's going to be able to bring in guys that fit his style more and keep guys that already do. Like a guy like Xavier Gilliam, I think he fits what he wants. I think he could, because he's a bigger guy. So I think that's going to be. There'll be a few guys that we roll with if we're able to bring Tony Rojas back next year. I think he fits this defense quite well. But he's going to have to. I anticipate him sticking on the next staff, and it might just work out for us.
Shane Lumen asks, could ask 100 questions, but I'll stick with one. Appreciate that, Shane. Why has it been 2 years now with the receivers not getting much separation? There's no threat of a competent passing game. Well, we just talked about the passing game, so we're going to ignore that part. I mean, Sean, we're you mentioned it as firing Marcus Hagans a second ago. I don't know what to say. We've been through so many. I mean, now you start thinking, like, should we have fired Stubbs? Like,
we shouldn't have. Yeah.
I'm going insane here when we talk about these receiving coaches, Sean. And Franklin was a receivers coach.
That's the damnedest thing out of everything. What are the 3 places that Franklin struggled finding coaches with? Offensive coordinator, receivers coach, and quarterback coach. James Franklin was a college quarterback. James Franklin coached receivers most of his career, and James Franklin was an offensive coordinator. So that's the most puzzling thing. And it's not that these guys didn't deserve to be fired, because they did. The problem is Franklin couldn't find a good replacement for any of them. So, we haven't had a good receivers coach here since Josh Gaddis. Josh Gaddis coached here, last coach here in 2017. That's been that long since we've had a good receivers coach. And I think Hagens is probably the worst out of all of them, except for the guy we got from Army. Maybe he's a little bit better than him.
Corley.
But yeah, Corley. I felt bad for that. I don't know why he was even here, but he was just kind of out of his league. But Stubblefield and Parker and Hagens, he didn't get those hires right. He didn't get the offensive coordinators right. So yeah, to answer the question, really, Marcus Hagens sucks. That's a big part of the reason why the receivers never progressed, because he's not a good enough coach to develop his receivers. That's the long and short of it. Because he's had multiple guys here, he's had talented guys here, and he hasn't been able to develop any of them. And ultimately, that comes back on him.
Josh Gaddis right now, just a Syracuse offensive analyst at the moment. So maybe if Penn State hires Fran Brown, he can come back and be a receivers coach. I don't know. I'm just messing around, but I would love for Josh Gaddis. I've said this before on the podcast, but for people that haven't been around, Josh Gaddis would come to Nittanyville quite a bit. He was fantastic to talk to. He was great. I love Josh Gaddis. It sucked when he left, obviously, but yeah, he did well when he was here. So,
no question.
All right. All right. Let me just read this real quick here. Ole Miss quarterback was playing. This is from Shane Hennigan. Appreciate you, Shane. I think this is maybe a long-time listener, first-time question from Shane Hennigan. Ole Miss quarterback was playing in Division II last year, and he casually just put up 35 at Georgia on Saturday. Why does it seem like every other legit Power 4 school can insert a quarterback to light it up at will, regardless of experience, except for Penn State?
Again, coaching matters. What does Danny O'Brien do? Does anybody have an answer to that? What this guy does, except
he's a punching bag guy that like quarterbacks.
Yeah, after it seems like the only time we see him is after the drive. He's holding the tablet. You
think it's just Angry Birds?
Even ever saying it. It could be. It doesn't even ever look like he's ever even saying anything to them. He just kind of sits there with those cool looking sunglasses, but that's about the only thing that it looks like he really does over there. So
is Sean
a lot of it's coaching, and then the word was out on James Franklin too. If you're a quarterback, don't go to Penn State. It's why Penn State struck out on so many quarterbacks last few years.
That's why I love Eli Drinkwitz from the standpoint of getting Bo back, but also getting Zollers back. Like that would be fun. I want to ask you, Sean, like I love Trace McSorley, but is Trace McSorley a good person to coach quarterbacks?
I don't know. I don't really understand why he's here either. And
it's like asking LeVar Arrington. It's like asking LeVar Arrington to coach linebackers. LeVar Arrington was a fantastic player on defense, but he drove Joe nuts because he did things incorrectly, but he made them work because he was just a beast, right? Like
right.
McSorley wasn't great at a lot of quarterbacking things, but he was a winner and he found ways to get it done, and I love him for that. But can you instill those similar things onto another guy? I don't know. I mean, we hadn't seen it, obviously, but like, I don't know. I'm just asking questions.
Yeah, and we talked about how successful Phil Trautwein and Frank Leonard were together, but a lot of that is because they were opposites. Phil Trautwein's a young guy. He's more of a calm person. Frank Leonard's old and was more in your face, kind of a more old school approach. So they worked really well together. I just kind of think Danny O'Brien and Trace McSorley, they're both very similar. They both played for Franklin, which is part of why they're there, because Franklin trusted them, and they were both guys that played under him. But I don't think he really added much to the staff. And this isn't to badmouth Trace or anything. He's just been in a tough spot in a spot that I don't really know if he was ready for, especially coaching under a quarterback coach like Danny O'Brien. It would be different if we still had Mike Yursich, who shouldn't be here anymore or anything, but I'm using him as an example as a guy that was an experienced offense coordinator, experienced quarterback coach, and we brought Trace McSorley in to kind of be his understudy. But that's not really what's happened here.
All right, let's get to our next question. I'm gonna answer this. MDM says, why can't we not run a simple slant route, a drag route? Why does Knowles refuse to spy a quarterback? We talked about a lot of that already, but just
coaching. Yeah, there's a lot of coaching and competence.
We run a lot of drag route and mesh routes when they're ready for it. Like we ran them against Iowa, and they were ready for it. They were ready for zone. Like they ran. Why does it always seem like we run mesh concepts when the defense is in zone, and whenever other teams run mesh, we're in man coverage and we get destroyed? Like it just seems like it always happens.
Andy's predictable. Yeah, again, a lot of this comes down to, like, to answer add on to the first question that we got of why we're here. Part of it is Andy's super predictable, and he's the Wizard of Oz. It's all just the show, but it's not real.
Todd Borland. Wasn't Borland a great linebacker for Wisconsin a couple years ago?
Yeah, and I think there was a Borland that played at Ohio State too. I think there were a couple of them.
Well, I don't think this is one of them, but Todd has to say, was James a bad judge of coaching talent or just unlucky? Both coordinators let us down on Saturday. There was more life for sure with Terry. We talked about the Big 12 thing a little bit before with offensive coordinators. This is why, like, just to go back to like James Franklin being fired, this is to me why it couldn't just be another offensive coordinator change. Like some people in the media are like, oh, why did you let him reset? Like, what do you mean? Have you not been paying attention? Like, okay, John Donovan, sure. Goes and gets Joe Moorhead. Things are good. Fantastic. Rainey pretty much asked to leave. Goes and gets it and doing a good job at Old Dominion. Then is where I feel like Franklin used up all of his lives, right? The Rock and Kirk Shiraka. Okay, it was almost seen maybe as like a temporary thing and really honestly didn't get a fair shot because of 2020 and is doing okay at Rutgers. But then saying, I don't want Shiraka, I want to get the guy I wanted all along and Mike Yursich and going to get Yursich. That to me was like, okay, this is your dude. You figured it, like this is who you want. And then that didn't work out. And then you blame him, say he's a jerk and didn't listen to anybody else and want to do his own thing, was the smartest guy in the room. Okay, you can say all those things, that's fine. But then you have to figure it out with your next guy. And they go get Andy Kotonicki, and it seems that Tyler Warren, who's probably the best tight end in the NFL, literally carried that team.
Yeah, so really it's both. Because we can't pretend like we weren't excited about Jim Knowles and Andy Kotonicki coming here, because I think we both were.
Yeah.
I think it was under the assumption, though, that Drew was only going to be here for a year. And Drew ended up staying his senior year, which is another thing to contribute to this team really being disjointed and not really fitting. Just because Andy and Drew Allar were a bit more like, what do they call it? Oil and water, when two things don't mix. So I think that happened. But yeah, really to answer the question, it was both. Because on one hand, The receivers coaches, he just always got those wrong. Never really brought in anybody super highly respected. I remember it was a head scratcher when we hired Taylor Stubberfield. It was a very similar situation. We hired Hagens. So he didn't get those. He didn't get that job right. Quarterback coach was very similar. Typically, the quarterback coach was always the offensive coordinator until Andy Kotelnicki came here, and then we hired Danny O'Brien because he was working under Mike Yurcich at the time, and we just promoted Danny O'Brien. That was a mistake. So it was a combination of being unlucky and James Franklin just not hiring the right people. So, yeah, it was a combination.
Yes. Great question. People want us to talk about coaching a little bit more. This is one from Matt. Would they consider a coach from the G5, say one who has helped recruit and coach Saquon, was an associate HC head coach under Nick Saban, and won a conference championship in 2024? Sean, do you know what they're talking about?
You're talking about Charles Huff. I wouldn't. In the concept of hiring a G4, G5, or whatever it's called now, guy, it's not something that I would totally turn my nose up on. There have been successful coaches that have come from that level before. We're seeing it right now with Indiana, with Cignetti coming from James Madison. Ohio State hired Jim Tressel from Youngstown State, so that wasn't even Group of Five. That was FCS back then. It was Division I AA. So I'm not opposed to it, but it has to be the right guy. And really, Charles Huff, I would just need to see him do more before I'd consider him for a job like Penn State. James Madison was a powerhouse, and I just don't think Southern Miss right now is, as a program. I know I believe they're having a pretty good year. They're just not on that level with the James Madison, at least in my view. In a few years, though, I really hope we're not looking for another coach again in a few years. But if we are, Charles Huff has a couple of conference championships down there. Sure, I'd be willing to give him a serious look.
I think I would take him, Sean. I think I would.
Would you? Right now?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he won a Sun Belt championship with Marshall last year. Marshall.
It's true. That's true.
And left because they weren't bought in. So he's like, I'm taking my ball and going home. I'm going to find somewhere else.
That's true.
Very well could potentially play James Madison in the Sun Belt championship this year. They're not in the same division, so we'd have to wait and see on that. But look, I'm very biased when it comes to Mr. Charles Huff. I've told the story again before, but it's been a while. Charles Huff was the very first person I ever interviewed in the podcast world when he was at Marshall. It was like Friday night. He had time and spoke with me for like 40 minutes. I should probably find the audio and repost that in the summer sometime. Charles Huff had no business interviewing with me on that, and he did. So yeah, he's a cool dude. He's a great guy. He did coach with Nick Saban. I think that honestly elevates your resume. It really does. Whether it's Cignetti or Cristobal or everybody on that staff or is around Nick Saban seems to end up doing something well.
Yes, he has a great tree.
Great tree, big tree of life. You know what I mean? Just massive tree. I wouldn't be my first pick, obviously, but if they were like, you know what, Charles Huff's the guy. He's a young guy. I think he's like 43 years old. Look, just to be completely honest, he's African American. He resonates with a lot of the recruits they would be going after. That is something you cannot discount, whether it's Marcus Freeman or Fran Brown or James Franklin. That does help in the recruiting world. And he was a very good recruiter, Sean, when he was at Penn State. A very good recruiter. And
I'm sorry,
go ahead. So I would say, I'm just saying, yes, I would take him.
There are guys that I would rather him over. Al Golden, I would rather him over. I'd rather him over Greg Schiano, partly because we already know those guys.
I'd take him over Matt Rule.
Rule's a little tougher. But I think of them along the same lines, Corey. especially after watching that Nebraska-Minnesota game on Friday.
Well, Sean, Minnesota, that's the best offense they've ever had there at PJ with PJ Fleck. That's the best passing offense. Like, you should have known better. Should have just knew. Sorry.
Yeah, that's being the tallest kid in kindergarten a little bit. But yeah, if you happen to catch that game on Friday night, it made me think. I was trying to imagine white helmets and blue stripe going up the middle of them. And, I saw a lot of things that I've seen in past Penn State offenses that I really don't want to see again. That's really why I don't want to hire Matt Rule. But yes, and part of that, Corey, I'm thinking of them along the same lines, Charles Huff and Matt Rule, for that reason. It's not really to be, I guess it's as much to be a compliment to Charles Huff as it is to be like, I really don't want to hire Matt Rule because I think of them along the same lines.
Yeah, we're going to get really in. People are asking about Joe Brady in the chat. We got some more questions coming up here. If you're listening on podcast, we're about to talk more about the coaching search. This one's from Sam Williams. The options for our next coach seem to be dwindling, and I'm not feeling confident. Just talk about your updated thoughts on the coaching search. No offense to Drinkwitz. I saw Missouri play and wasn't impressed. Well, unlike most coaches that Penn State's reached out to so far, at least Eli Drinkwitz found a way to win in beating Auburn. Auburn, right? Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of them lost. So at least he found a way to win. And look, Jordan Hare, I know Penn State made it look easy. That is not necessarily an easy place to go get a win, especially since Auburn was in wounded animal mode. I'm happy about it because Hugh Freeze sucks. And I would love to root for Auburn as like my SEC team, but couldn't do it with Hugh Freeze there. So I'm really hoping they get rid of that dirtbag sooner rather than later. But that's not what you asked. I want to maybe just calm everyone down, Sean, and say, look, we came out firing with the coaching stuff right away. Most coaching searches obviously happen a little bit quicker given that it's the offseason. And it's like, look, Penn State fired James Franklin when they fired him to maximize the time that they could do their research, be the first ones kind of out of the gate on this. So they didn't have to rush to a decision. So it's hard to imagine, even if a deal was done, which I don't think one is, but even if a deal was done, you wouldn't necessarily know any better right now if that coach is still coaching a football team. So I want you to relax a little bit. And I realize now that the jobs are starting to open up. Florida, LSU is probably going to be there soon, so there's going to be some competition potentially. But I do think you need to maybe just relax a smidgen, because there was a lot of names in the first week, and now it has gone a little bit more quiet. These conversations are still happening. Things are still going on behind the scenes. Things are still progressing. And there haven't been a lot of absolute no's. There have been some absolute no's. We talked about Nick Saban last week. That's an absolute no. I'm a little surprised by this, but I heard today even Marcus Freeman is an absolute no for Florida. I thought he was an absolute no for Penn State, but I really thought he would at least leverage the Florida job even more. But somebody reported today that Marcus Freeman was an absolute no even for Florida. So I would assume Marcus Freeman, if he's an absolute no for Florida, he's probably an absolute no for Penn State as well. I thought he would actually take that job. So there's a couple of the absolute no's out there. I think, though, you mentioned Eli Drinkwitz. I like Eli Drinkwitz. He's actually –
I do too.
Sean, why don't we give people our, not who we think, but who are top three, of the people we know are still relatively in the running, who we would potentially want. I think I would probably, and maybe not necessarily in order my top three, but my three are Drinkwitz, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, and why not just say Joe Brady as my third?
Okay. Yeah.
Unless you remind me of someone I'm forgetting that I'm changing mine.
I would say DeBoer, Drinkwitz, and I would probably go Mike Elko. Now I know those are all splashy hires. And do I think they'd all say yes to us? Not necessarily. And I think when people listen to this either tomorrow or whenever, or right now, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? Candor. And what I would say is the SEC is not for everybody. And it's not just because it just means more, because Alabama's doing quite well outside of that Florida State debacle. They're doing quite well this year. Alabama can win the national championship. It could very, very well happen. And Kalen DeBoer may want to come up north. So I think that's a better possibility than maybe the general public realizes. Drinkwitz could happen. And then Mike Elko, who's from up here. I think the thing with Drink, though, is he's never really coached up here before. So that's a little bit of a concern that I have. Just is he gonna fit up here culturally? And I really don't know the answer to that, but I do think we'd have fun offenses, which would be good. And I do think he could coach, which is the biggest thing. He could coach. And then a name that I put, like, if you want to say, all right, well, those are all huge names. They might all be coaching the playoffs. Pat Kraft may not be that keen on hiring a coach that's going to be coaching until mid-January. I would still say Brian Hartline. He checks a lot of the boxes for me, and I think he is a realistic possibility, and I think he is somebody who would come here. It would be interesting to see what he would do with Ohio State, because Ohio State's going to be in the playoffs unless they have an epic collapse, which isn't going to happen at Ohio State. So he's going to be in the playoffs. Does Ryan Day let him go? Does he choose to go? Does he continue to coach Ohio State but still recruit for Penn State? I don't know. So I guess I gave you 4 names, but if you think one of those names is realistic name that I think would be a great hire, would be Brian Hartline.
Yeah, and the Elko one, I know people have been reporting on it. That one came out of left field to me. I just feel like A&M has, like, A, they're winning, and B, they got a lot of money down there. And
they do.
I do think he fits the Pat Kraft mold very well. And I think if they could get him, I think Elko would be the guy Pat Kraft absolutely would want, and it would be a slam dunk hire. I just don't know. He would be my number one if I think they could get him. Seriously. I just don't know if they could.
Yeah, I do wonder about the money too. But then to answer the question a little bit, I don't really agree that the options are dwindling. I don't.
No.
I don't really agree. I don't agree with that premise.
Not at all.
Really much at all. I think
that's a way to answer the question, Sean.
Yeah, and then when you think about this could be a long process, guys, and we kind of need to strap in a little bit, because even if we do hire a coach, it's probably not going to be announced till at the earliest around Thanksgiving.
Wait, Sean, before you get too far down that, we have another good question. I will tee that up for you.
Sure.
If we can get to Mark Thomas's question. Before I do that, just real quick about Joe Brady. Donnie talks about not being a head coach. Look, Dan Lanning wasn't. Kirby Smart wasn't. I'm not saying that you can't go get a head coach. I just also think Bill O'Brien wasn't, first of all. Neither was Joe Paterno, for that matter. If you want to go that far.
Marcus
Freeman. I just feel and I'm not saying you can't, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, wouldn't you feel better about going, getting, and finding the next one of those persons potentially?
Yes. And preferably, would I rather a head coach? Yes. But it's not a disqualifier for me. I think what you could see if we were to go down the coordinator hole, if we were to go after Joe Brady or if we were to go after Brian Hartline, you could see some early brain farts. You think about Bill O'Brien's first time head coach. We had Gerald Hodges returning kicks. That's still one of the most puzzling things I've ever seen. So you could see some early things like that. Marcus Freeman lost to Marshall, either his first or second year. So you're going to see some growing pains. But you have to be willing to deal with it, because 2026, no matter who we hire, there's going to be growing pains. Just going to be nobody's going to be putting us as a national championship contender going into next year.
Last thing I'll just say, there's a little bit about this. I forget where, but Joe Brady going, we talked about Terry Pegula not really providing a lot of value when James Franklin was here. Whether it's Joe Brady or somebody else, you want to make sure Mr. Pegula is on board potentially with helping moving forward, whoever that may be.
Of course, and that was a problem with him and Franklin. Supposedly they didn't get along. I don't know the validity to that, but he did not contribute much at all to the football program when James Franklin was here. The thing about Brady is I do wonder if he'd want to recruit and if he'd be jonesing for an NFL job. So I'm a little less high on him than some people are, but I still think he could have success here.
I think this actually might be our last question on Twitter, at least. Mark Thomas, to follow back up with what we were talking about. He says, what is the line of demarcation in terms of 2025 record for prospective head coaching hires? I don't think we can hire a coach that makes the playoffs. I don't think hiring a 7-5 guy energizes the recruits and the fans. Doesn't matter one way or another. I want you to tie that in, Sean, to what he kind of alluded to a little bit there, as far as like the time frame for hiring somebody, but also like, does it matter if they go to the playoffs or not?
I think in a lot of ways it does. It does and it doesn't. And I think the perfect scenario is somebody like Eli Drinkowitz in Missouri go 9-3, because that's probably not good enough to make the playoffs, but it is good enough to sell to your fan base. If Matt Rule goes to 8-4, though, that's not good enough to sell to your fan base. But then if Mike Elko or Kalen DeBoer are coaching into mid-January, if they're in the national championship, which I think either of them could be, that's going to be hard as well. It could even be hard for Brian Hartline, because Brian Hartline is a Buckeye through and through, and he may feel bad about abandoning his post to go coach at Penn State. I think he would. And then I do wonder if he does accept the Penn State job. I think that would probably be reported at least by around Thanksgiving. Ryan Day may tell him, you're gone. He might be like, that's okay. Your services are no longer needed here. So yeah, the timing, I think Pat Kraft's probably going to figure that into this. And it could mean less of a likelihood of a guy like Kalen DeBoer or Mike Elko coming here.
I thought NBC, the Peacock broadcast, is so awful for so many reasons. But the halftime show, Nicole Auerbach mentioned something like, well, they have time now because the transfer portal doesn't open until January, and completely forgot about like the early signing period where a lot of these guys sign. And it's like, did you forget about that? And it was just baffling to me. But I do like one thing I just want to say is like, what do you sacrifice getting somebody that you really want? Like, let's say Mike Elko would say yes, but I want to finish my playoff run. Do you sacrifice making that hire and taking a Matt Rule instead because you can get him right then and there? Or are you willing to sacrifice a month and a half in order to get Mike Elko? Because in my opinion, I'm saying yes. I'm waiting for Mike Elko. I don't care if he finishes his, and I know that potentially sets you back for the rest of the 2026, but as far as the future of the program, if I have Mike Elko or Matt Rule, I don't care about a hiccup for a little bit.
It not only sets you back, though, Corey. Let's say there's a handshake agreement between Pat Kraft and Kalen DeBoer. Let's say Kalen DeBoer goes and wins a national championship. He may be feeling pretty good down in Tuscaloosa then and be like, oh, I'm actually the man down here. Because a lot of the problems that the board may have is I followed up Nick Saban, and that is a very, very hard thing to do. Similar thing with Mike Elko. I don't think A&M's good enough to win a national championship, but let's say in the off chance they do, or even they make the national championship game, and Elko goes, you know what, I'm good down here. Pat Kraft, thanks, but no thanks. Do you think there's a scenario where Penn State hires one of these guys and they continue coaching their team? Like, that would be bizarre, but do you think that could happen?
I don't know if it would be public information, but why can't he sign something?
Yeah, if he could sign something, sure. If he could get something in writing, then I would kind of be all right with it. than settling for,
I'm not saying, I get what you're saying,
coach.
right? It's a peculiar situation. I just don't want them to settle for somebody just because, like, the playoff is big now, right? If it was just the top 4 teams, okay,
Yeah,
right. But now, like, do you want a coach from the college ranks that isn't in the playoff?
yeah, and that's good. That's true too. And keep in mind too, this is all pretty new, partly because the playoff is so big. Like we've seen coaches leave before bowl games before. Brian Kelly, when he went to LSU, left before Notre Dame's bowl game. So we've seen that plenty of times throughout the years. But now there's 12 teams that can make the playoff, and there's going to be 16 as soon as next year, maybe the year after. So this is going to be a new thing where if a head coach from a playoff team wants to move somewhere, he's going to be put in an awkward position. Is the school itself going to say, okay, you can take the Penn State job, but you need to coach the rest of the year? Or do they want the guy to move on? Or does the coach even want to do that? It's all it's all uncharted territory. And I also want to make this point too. I know it doesn't really have much to do with the question. And tell me if you agree with this. I think Penn State's a better job than Florida. I think Florida is a very overhyped job. They've had 2 coaches ever that have been successful there, and everybody after Urban has flamed out. They don't have a university president right now. And I think Penn State has just as much, if not more money than Florida.
I would agree with that.
Like the Florida tradition isn't as good as Penn State's. They are in a better recruiting area. Got to give them that. But they also have to fight off a lot of different teams for recruits down there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And again, like, what is the means to the end there, realistically? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your goal? Because if your goal was Urban Meyer, Florida, you're not going to get back to that.
No. I mean, Urban really is one of the great college coaches ever. I think the reason he's not mentioned more like near Saban is he just doesn't have the longevity that him, certainly Joe, Bobby Bowden have had. But he's one of the great coaches. And then they had Steve Spurrier, who was a brilliant coach then too. And outside of that, not a whole lot. So I do think Penn State is the better job. The job that I would be nervous if it came up, and you mentioned it already, was LSU. Because LSU is a better job than Penn State. It just is. So I think Penn State still has the best job out there, which should make you feel pretty good going into this search.
Yeah, you mentioned Spurrier. I think Josh Pate said something the other day about how Eli Drinkwitz is like a future Steve Spurrier. Like, just gonna do his thing, and like, will he probably ever win it? Maybe not, but he's like that. You know what you're getting with Eli Drinkwitz, and like, he could very easily kind of just do his thing for a long time, and everyone would be like, "Yeah, Steve Spurrier is pretty damn good when you think about it."
Yeah, Spurrier was a really good coach at Florida. He was even a good coach at South Carolina. I think he's been their best coach of my lifetime there. And he was an older guy when he was coaching there. Didn't work out in the NFL, but not a lot of college coaches do.
Yeah, and the last thing we'll say, Sean, before I get to that, please make sure you've liked the video and you subscribed on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast, please subscribe there as well. If you drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we'll read it on the show. The thing that when we talk about this coaching search, to me, like, look at Frank Beamer at South Carolina. He has some serious momentum there for a little bit. Go back to when Spencer Rattler was there and they beat Clemson and things were looking up, right? Lenora Sellers gets there. They were expecting a big year this year, and they've fallen apart, and it's not going to end well this season, and they're not going to fire him. But my point being that they're starting to lose that momentum, right? Like, they were recruiting really well there for a little bit. And I just feel like you get momentum when you hire somebody, even somebody like Beamer, who hadn't necessarily done something like some of these other guys we've talked about in his career. But you get revitalization. People donate. People tune in. People, you get the attention of people. time to change the way things are around here, right? I mean, it's the same why, you get a new manager comes in, whatever the case may be, right? But that does begin to fade. So you have to capitalize on that. And like Cincinnati has done a great job of doing that. Someone like Sharon Moore probably losing any momentum that he may have had coming off of the Harbaugh years, right? It's starting to like, ooh, are we really going to commit to this long term? So Penn State, when they make this decision, whoever it is they are going to get a wave of excitement. And it will be different depending on who they get, but there's going to be some of that regardless of who it is. And it's going to be very interesting to see. And I think it's going to come down to if they are here long term, if they're able to sustain that, and if they're able to showcase and maintain that level of excitement. Franklin did that. Franklin won a Big Ten championship in 2016 that carried him a long ways away, and at least into 2020. Whoever it is going to have to find a way to keep that momentum going through whatever lull they may have in 2026 and 2027, if any at all. So that's, and I think, Sean, like you can do that recruiting, but you're going to have to find ways to win games you shouldn't early on. And that is, I think I want somebody who's able to do that. And I know that's a hard thing to find, but you need somebody who's found a way to win games they shouldn't win.
I mean, you look at the schedule next year, it's not that challenging.
No.
Just saying, that's a much softer schedule than this year where we play the number 1 and number 2 team back-to-back in the country. So, and not to mention playing Oregon as early as we did. So it is a much easier schedule next year. So maybe there'll be less opportunity for some of those brain fart losses or WTF losses. But yeah, to beat a team like we go to Michigan next year, to win that game, that would be a huge win for the new head coach. That means if we beat Michigan next year, it's a successful season. Like you talked about recalibrating expectations. That's got to be kind of our expectation going into next year. And if we're doing this podcast, we're gonna tell people right away, we're not gonna be. In all likelihood, I got to see what the roster's like. I'm probably not going to pick them to make the playoffs, but I will give you realistic expectations, realistic goals that the new coach could meet as soon as next year. And one of them is find a way to beat Michigan, find a way to beat USC, or at least split them. And I think you could say then you probably have a successful year then.
Yeah, I mean, look at this year. I mean, you could arguably say Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana are 3 of the top 5 best teams in the country.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the winner, either Indiana or Ohio State, that's your national champion.
So we went extra long for you today. We will not have a show tomorrow. Again, we kind of recorded on a random Tuesday. We will not record one on Wednesday. Real quick, redgoblets.com. Link is in the description below. All the graphics, all the cool things we do here, he's done that. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, is a graphic designer of sorts for his job, but he does some freelancing on the side. He can help you out, whatever you need help with, your small business. He's the go-to guy for that. He'll give you a little family-friendly discount as well, given that you're coming from Hardcore Penn State Football. Just let him know. Pick'em is up. So please go ahead and get your pick'em. Again, apologize for a little bit of a delay there, but the pick'em is up. Some very sort of interesting matchups this week, especially given that some of the teams we thought we could depend on didn't help us out in the Big Ten. Sean, any final thoughts before we get out of here on this episode?
Try not to get too down about the future. And I know it's very easy to do so, especially the immediate future with what we got coming up. I think this head coaching search, I think it's going to end better than some of you may think. So I will leave you on an optimistic note. I
appreciate that, Sean, because I want to, right? I'm just very like, they really can't screw this up, right? Like they really can't.
They can't. They got to get it right. But I think Kraft is going to do it. I really do. As long as he's not influenced by people like Jay Paterno, people like Anthony Lebrano. If he could just block out outside noises to the extent that he can, and I know that's very difficult at a place like Penn State. If he could do that, I think he's gonna make the right choice, and I trust him on this.
Okay,
as much as I can.
Well, there you have it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, we appreciate you being here. Appreciate all the banter in the chat. James Noter asked about John Gruden. I think we've answered that before, but absolutely not. Appreciate you guys. Makes the show a lot of fun with people watching live on YouTube. That's Sean Kane. I'm Corey Listoki. You have been watching and listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Until next time, see you guys.
Have a good night.